I remember the look on her face. It was a mix of panic and shame. The car had already stopped moving, but she sat there gripping the steering wheel like it would save her from drowning. I stood outside, watching through the window. "Are you okay?" I asked. She nodded, but her eyes were wet. I knew she wasn't okay. Her name was Amina. She was my friend's younger sister, and I had known her since she was a child. She was always full of life, always laughing. The kind of person who never seemed afraid of anything. But that day, the light in her eyes had dimmed. It had been a small accident. Just a bump against a wooden stub by the roadside. No one was hurt, except maybe the pride of the old man who owned the store. He had shouted at her, shaking his fist. The driving instructor had apologized, but Amina never said a word. She just sat there, frozen. And after that day, she never touched the steering wheel again. At first, everyone thought it was just a phase. She would try again when she was ready. But days turned into weeks, and weeks into years. While others learned to drive and moved on, Amina avoided cars like they were wild animals. At family gatherings, when the topic of driving came up, she would change the subject. If someone joked about her fear, she laughed along, but I could see the tightness in her shoulders. She never denied it, but she never admitted it either. She found ways around it. She took taxis when she needed to go somewhere. If she was with friends, she always sat in the back seat. When she traveled to another town, she took the bus. She built a life that never required her to drive. And for a long time, it worked. But I knew the truth. Sometimes, when we were out together, she would glance at the driver's seat of a parked car. Just for a moment. And in that moment, I could see something in her eyes. Not just fear. Regret. She wanted to drive. But something inside her wouldn't let her. Years passed. Amina finished school, got a job, and became an adult like the rest of us. She was successful, independent, and always busy. But in some ways, she was still stuck in that moment, in that car, on that day. We all got used to it. It became normal. Amina doesn't drive, we would say. No one questioned it anymore. But I did. I wondered how it felt for her, watching everyone around her move freely, while she stayed in the same place. I wondered if she ever dreamed of driving, of rolling down a highway with the wind in her hair, of going wherever she wanted without waiting for someone else to take her. But I never asked. Because deep down, I already knew the answer. One evening, many years later, I was walking home when I saw something that made me stop. Amina was sitting in the driver's seat of a car. The engine was running. I stood there, watching, afraid to move. She was alone. There was no instructor. No friend pushing her to try. Just her. Her hands were on the wheel. Her breathing was slow. Then, she did something that shocked me. She moved the car. Not far. Just a little forward. Then she stopped. Took a deep breath. Moved it a little more. Stopped again. I didn't want to startle her, so I stayed back. But my heart was racing. I didn't know what had changed. Maybe she was just tired of being afraid. Maybe she had found her own way to face it. But whatever the reason, she was trying. And then it happened. She turned the wheel. Pressed the pedal. The car rolled forward, slow but steady. She didn't stop this time. She kept going, down the quiet street. And as she passed, I saw something I hadn't seen in years. She was smiling. It wasn't a big, loud smile. It was small, careful. But it was there. And for the first time, I knew. Amina was coming back. And she wasn't afraid anymore. Later that night, I saw her at a small cafe near our neighborhood. I sat across from her, waiting, letting the silence settle. Then I asked, what changed? She stirred her tea, looking down at the cup. For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she said, It wasn't about the accident. I frowned. What do you mean? She sighed. That day, when I hit the store, I wasn't just scared of driving. I was scared of failing. She took a deep breath, then continued. All my life, I was always the one who got things right. In school, at home, everywhere. People expected me to do well. And when I made that mistake, it felt like I had ruined everything. That's why I couldn't get back in the car. It wasn't just about fear. It was about shame. I sat there, stunned. She laughed, but it was a soft, tired laugh. It took me years to understand that failing once didn't mean I couldn't try again. I spent so long avoiding it because I thought it defined me. But yesterday, I just woke up and thought, what if I try? I smiled. And you did? She nodded. And you know what? She looked up at me, her eyes bright again. It wasn't as scary as I thought. And in that moment, I knew she had won. Not just over her fear of driving, but over everything that had been holding her back.